What's up, everybody? This is Case Study QB back in the Progressive War Room, and I am here with my man David Rutherford, and he is a local journalist who I wanted to talk to for a while, and he's very special to me because he lives in my town. He's in my city, and I was talking the other day with some people about local journalism and how little I know, and I was so grateful that I was having him on the show so that we could find out about local politics. We know a lot, and what's popular is what's on CNN, what's on MSNBC. You see the feud between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. But it's very, very important as well, almost probably maybe even more important, to know what's going on in your local community with your mayor, you know, with the city council and things of that nature. So it's good for you to find out the resources for you. I'm just glad that I found out one of the best resources for me. David, go ahead and say hi to the people.
Hey, everybody. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite, Case. Yeah. As you said, I'm a local journalist. I am the owner of Tap Into Plainfield, and we live in Plainfield, New Jersey, as you said. And yeah, it's local journalism is something that is really, it's not like it used to be 20, 30 years ago. It's a lot different. It's evolving. But as you said, it's insanely important to our lives, to our everyday lives, to know what's going on in our communities. So happy to talk about it.
Awesome, 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 man. I'm just checking out this website, and I've definitely bookmarked it for myself. I'm going to let my wife know about it, and we're going to definitely keep on top. But now we have a great source to go to for the local news and find out what's going on with the city council. I know you go to the various meetings. So what challenges do you face when reporting on local issues that might not make it to national headlines, but are crucial to the community?
Some of it is education, really. In the national discourse, people tend to have a general understanding of a lot of certain concepts. Of course, not everything. And of course, the electorate and the readers are not always educated on national issues, but they have some understanding. Whereas with local stuff, it may be something that people just really don't understand. So you have to kind of educate as you're informing and writing about something, because it may just be something that's just not understandable how these things work on a local level, whether it's certain tax exemptions, for example, or certain things that happen in the Board of Education and elsewhere. So a lot of it is people are just not really well versed in a lot that happens on the local level. And there's not really, even if someone spends a lot of time on YouTube, or if they are an informed person, it's still relatively hard for a lot of people to understand some of these local issues. Most of the stuff is not hard at all. You're covering, you know, a lot of news isn't very political. You're going, a business is open, you talk to the business owner. That stuff is great. But a lot of the more serious issues, it's often a matter of education, and it's not always easy to learn about these things through Google. Sometimes you really have to kind of spell things out, and it takes time because you write about it once and then you come back and write about it again, and you kind of inform your readers over time about these things. But people are definitely less versed on local issues and local lingo and such than they are nowadays with national issues.
You brought up a good point about educating the people and let them know what's going on. And there might be even some details that even I must admit, there's probably details to the city council and various things that I don't know about. But how do you get the word out? How do you educate or even get the word out about your website? Do you feel like it's a marketing thing that has to be part of the equation of educating the people? People have to even know how to find you to be educated. Like, have you visited any of the local high schools, maybe thought about doing a class for the students, and then the students can even tell their parents, something like that?
Yeah, no. So Tap Into Plainfield is a franchise, and I'm not the first franchisee. There's been a couple others before me, and I've been doing this for about a year. And it's a great issue you bring up, especially in a community like where we live. It's harder to engage people. A lot of the people who are engaged into the news tend to come from higher incomes who are very engaged in local news. They tend to be homeowners. All those things really make someone more engaged. So when you have a place that's more renters, where the income's a bit lower, where there's a higher poverty rate, it is harder to just engage the population at large. And that's something that we work through, and we do a lot of social media. I try to touch all different points in the community. It's easy to just go to the folks that are really organized and have their press releases ready, and they know exactly how to deal with the press. But sometimes you have to go and do stories about folks that aren't really used to dealing with media, that don't write press releases. You got to go down, you might get a text, you go down and you handle it. So it's really trying to get deeper into the community and tell the stories. And that's a long-term project, because then folks will say, oh, wow, okay, this exists, this is something that they're writing about us too. So there's a few different ways. Some is direct. Hey, we're on social media, writing good stories, making sure the pictures look good, making sure you work right with the algorithm, like any content creator. But then there's also the long-term project of making sure you're writing stories about everyone to pull everyone in. And one thing we're even thinking of, we have a language thing in Plainfield. There's a lot of people who speak Spanish and not English. And how do we engage them? So we're looking at tools to produce more stories in Spanish, because it's an easy fix there theoretically, but producing everything in English and Spanish does have its logistical hurdles. So it's twofold answer. One, you promote, you make sure everything's tidy, and you try to get the word as far as possible, but you also write about everyone, so everyone can feel connected to the paper. Like, hey, they write about me and folks that I know.
To highlight what you just said, you talked about talking to the residents about their stories. One of the big news stories that happened in Plainfield, I remember, and apparently you helped report on this, was when the residents got forced out of their condemned apartment homes. Can you tell us, how did you find out about it, and how did you break that story?
That was so. Well, one way I find out about it, and this tells a little bit more of the story of local journalism. A lot of stuff I find out about on Facebook. Tap Into Plainfield is the only outlet that reports locally on Plainfield news. Now, we're not considered to be in a news desert, because we do have the Courier and the Star Ledger. But if there's a Board of Education meeting that's controversial and the Courier nor the Star Ledger are not there to report on the story, they're not really reporting on local news. They really, they put a few crime stories up, and that's it. So without Tap Into Plainfield, I think that the town would kind of be up to its own devices, and it would be people seeing things on Facebook. It would be just, oh, I saw it on Facebook, but no one with any accountability for that narrative, because people can say anything on Facebook. And I'll see there was a murder on West 5th Street yesterday night, and I'll reach out to the police, and there absolutely was none, right? So you can't always believe what you see on Facebook, right? It happens.
That's a good point.
It really happens, and that's kind of what Plainfield. That was the reality for a while before there was a Tap Into Plainfield. Is that people were kind of left to their own devices. But we did have a blogosphere for about 10 years. There were people who, I could talk a little bit more about that. How that kind of people really trying to keep the spirit of local news alive before Tap Into Plainfield. There were people mainly born in the 40s, so people who really grew up getting their news in the daily paper. And when that was kind of dying in the 2000s, they went into action and started blogging. And I was part of that for a few years, but there's a couple other figures who even more. But so long story short,
no problem.
On Facebook is where I learned about that they were marching down there. Facebook and a couple text messages. So I went down there to see them protesting and took pictures and made that a story. And then that story evolved for several months, but most intensely in August. But yeah, it was Facebook. And a lot of the intel I get is from Facebook and people in the community who send a text message or post something online, and I run out to check it out. So a lot of it is crowdsourced.
Yeah, I remember watching that on national news, and had the local mayor, and they were talking about how the people had to leave this condemned apartment. Like, I never saw what became of that. Can you let us know where they stand today?
Good question. So I'll go through it as quick as possible. So basically, it was deemed that the conditions were unsafe in that building, and they were given 24 hours to leave, which was really unprecedented. That to have to leave that quickly, and the building's still vacant. The building is still vacant. They were doing some repairs on it. I'm not sure in recent months, but they were repairing in the months after that. And the city sued the landlord. The city sued the landlord for its negligence. And then the judge said, "You're equally negligent." The judge said, "Your hands are dirty too." The judge, almost verbatim said, "Your hands are dirty too. You're as responsible as the landlord for what happened." And that was kind of the last thing that happened in the legal sphere with it. And the building's still vacant. The one next door, the identical building next door, which is also not in good shape, had a fire.
I remember that
earlier this year, but the residents did not leave. It's still, if not fully occupied, highly occupied.
They might have saw what happened to the other residents. Was like, nope, we staying right here.
Might have,
Thank you so much for that information. Can you share an instance where you had to balance journalistic objectivity with the pressure from local politics or business interests?
I won't even say it's local. So I'm born and raised here. I know a lot of people from here, a lot of businesses and such. It's not even and people who happen to be politicians. It's an everyday thing where you have to weigh your objectivity over. Sometimes it messes up relationships. Sometimes, there's no paywall on any Tap Into site, and Tap Into is a network of around 85 to 90 different papers. So if anyone in New Jersey, there's a good chance if you're in New Jersey, it's also in Florida and I believe another state, but it's heavily in New Jersey. Oh, New York, some in New York, Long Island and such. But especially in New Jersey, you can go to tapinto.net and see if there's a local Tap Into that reports on your town. There's no paywall. It's ad supported. So that also means that people are potential advertisers. So you have to weigh your objectivity above all of that. It's just something you have to do. When you grew up here like me, there's going to be someone who doesn't like the story. Maybe they're a politician, maybe they're a friend, maybe there's someone who, it could be anybody, but it really is. It's something you work on every day. But when you admit it to yourself, that it's something that you have to deal with, you deal with it better than just say, "Oh yeah, no, nothing gets to me." No, it's something you have to deal with. You have to face and deal with and say, "I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to say what happened, and let the chips fall where they may."
How do you maintain trust with the community when covering controversial or divisive topics?
One way that I find is really important for me is continuity. When you write about a certain subject and you put it on the record, you bring it back up the next time you write about it. So by the time you're writing about something for the 5th time, you have a quote from September 3rd, you have a quote from October 8th, you have a quote from December 23rd. And when you report on it, you have all the history and you have links about the past times you wrote about it. And it really lets the community, it reminds the community that you're following these stories in a way that no one else is. You're following these stories. You're on top of it. You know what so-and-so said a month ago regarding this, and you're keeping it there, putting it on the record. And I think that's the best way. And also just always keeping it accurate, always keeping the accuracy. Anyone can make mistakes. Anyone can misinterpret something. But if you ever do, you fix it right away. Because, to take it to national, right? Nowadays in local politics, Board of Ed meetings, city council meetings and such, you can watch them. They're streamable now online in Plainfield, right? But people don't have the 3 hours to sit down and watch a meeting. The same way I don't sit down and watch C-SPAN and watch the Senate hearing for 5 hours, right? We say, okay, well, so-and-so is going to break down what happened in the Senate. Maybe it's a YouTuber, maybe it's the Times with its paywall. Sorry, maybe it's another publication. but we rely on people to distill what happened in these long meetings. And we trust that if something really important happens, they won't leave it out. Now they do, right? But we kind of trust that they won't. And that's kind of what the job is in local. It's like, is this person catching the essence of the meeting? And if the people who were at the meeting or were at the event, if they read your coverage of it and it doesn't match what they saw, that's how you lose credibility. Because it's, well, I was there and he seems really focused on that one thing that someone said, but it wasn't nearly the most important. He didn't really capture what happened at this meeting through his writing. So that's something that's really, really important for you to do, is really get the tenor of what happens, to tell people what happened, because people have busy lives. No one has the time to, like I said, watch a 3-hour meeting, and they want you to distill it, and they trust you to. And that's something, a year into this, that's something that I'm always trying to build up, is that trust with the community.
Awesome. Speaking of trust, so that reminds me of something that you just said earlier about how news was spread on Facebook and how some of the news might be false, so you don't know what to trust. So it's good to have you go on there and you would see any news and then you would try to verify it. Like, do you go back to that link yourself and say, hey, this is not true, I did the research? And at the same time, you're kind of promoting your brand of, hey, I'm from Plain Tap In. Have you ever done that before? At times
I'll take the initiative to go and do that. And sometimes I don't. But I will come in, especially if I've written about something already. I'll go in and post a link. Someone would say, write it down. And development's a big topic, I think, everywhere, especially places like Plainfield with the train station. Whether everyone has an opinion. No one is opinionless. No one is agnostic on development. They either, whatever it is, they're very pro-development. They want more. They don't want the tax breaks. They want them. They want this type of business, whatever. Everyone has opinions about development. So it's a hot button issue. And I'll see in one of the biggest Facebook group for our town, which is called The Buzz in and around Plainfield.
Okay.
Someone would say, hey, this building's dilapidated. It's falling down. Why don't they make this into something? And the city council 2 weeks ago voted to let it be made into some sort of warehouse or complex. So I'll post a link. Hey, this was already voted on. Here it is. So usually when I can give an official link, I'll say, hey, I'll let people know, because, just like people won't watch a 3-hour meeting. Some people also will read the headline and not read an article. So there's always, other ways to engage people. And we're looking into other ways to produce media besides just I say print, but we don't actually print, the digital copy driven, right? Media.
Gotcha. So like maybe having a YouTube channel or something like that?
YouTube or a podcast, even, different avenues. But I think, print journalism, it's always going to be important. There's always going to be a place for it. Even though I get a lot of my news, I happen to use YouTube for a lot of mine. But on the national level, I like to watch my YouTube shows. But everyone has a place in the ecosystem, and I think print journalism is here to stay. And it's sad what's happened to it on a local level. I was talking earlier about the bloggers who 27-ish into 2017-ish, people just took it upon themselves because these local papers just stopped reporting on anything going on in the town except for the crime blog. And when you're a primarily 92% Black and Latino community and all you get is crime stories, I mean, that's something I deal with. What is newsworthy when it comes to crime? It really is a scale, it's great to get clicks, but at what cost if it's always a crime story about the town, right? So it's obviously a murder or a big drug bust that's newsworthy, right? But if there's a stabbing in someone's backyard at a cookout, a family member with another one, is that something to tell everybody in the town? It's something I have to deal with at times.
Yeah. I remember when I first came to Plainfield. I've been here over 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to get involved. My kids were young and I wanted to get involved. So I was very excited. And I went to a couple of city council meetings. And one of the early things that I found out was that the mayor at that time did not have a like a treasurer. The treasurer of the city for the mayor level. And I thought that was kind of baffling because like that's the person that's supposed to look over the budget, look over, make sure, scrutinize everything. And I'm like, if there's ever something where some corruption could go on, is like don't have a treasurer that's keeping track of the money. But one of the sources was a blogger, and I forgot the name of it, and I think it's defunct now. There was a Plainfield blog that I found, and I used to always go and search for this site whenever there was an election, so I could kind of sift through the histories of the different candidates, and I could kind of know, okay, you know, Democrats are really big in this town, and be one side that say real Democrats, and the other side would say local, or have some other like tag name, but they're Democrats as well. And I would look and kind of try to see if I can make the best decision on, do I want the same regime to have a stronghold, or do I want to split it up and let a new people come in? And like you said, blogging, that blog was a very good source for me, who don't go to all the meetings, don't go to all the various events that I didn't know all the details, but I was able to get a brief run of how to vote. And I love one thing I do, and luckily in Plainfield, it's very easy to vote. It's not like the nightmares that you hear down south, where you wait for hours and hours on a line. I've literally lived here 10 years. I've never spent more than 10 minutes voting. It's all very quick. So yeah, I totally hear you on that blog. I don't know if you want to say anything in response to what I just said.
Yeah, no, definitely. We need more bloggers. I blog for a bit here, and it's different than news. But who you're talking about, Bernice Paglia, she was a reporter at the Courier News, and she covered Plainfield. And after she retired, you know, they started sending journalists. It would be a 24-year-old kid with a smartphone would be like, you know, they got totally underfunded and were not able to cover Plainfield anymore. And for, I believe, about 10 years, she did every single day. She wrote a blog post about Plainfield, and 80% of the time hers were news, or maybe 70, you know, most of the time they were news reporting, not just blogging and speculation. So she kind of kept it going and really got Plainfield through 10 years of, if not a news desert on paper by the definition, which is woefully underestimated. When they say like however many million in the United States have no access to local news, they're looking at and they're talking about these rural places and stuff in the South mainly. Yeah, that's like the whole county has no news at all. But we're deep into the New York metro area, right?
Yeah.
And there are many municipalities who these larger legacy newspapers don't cover basically at all, besides, in our case, besides crime, more or less. But there's just a huge lack of coverage, and it's just trying to close that gap, because like you said, figuring out who to vote for, it's tough. It's tough when you know, I'm from here, born and raised, but I lived in Philadelphia for a bit, and I would be like, who do I vote for council in Philly? I don't know. Like, where do you even start to, like, you know, to figure it all out? So
I've tried to watch debates in the past, and the League of Women Voters, they do a great job. They used to handle the national level, but they kicked them out after, I believe, Ross Perot, and now they do a great job though, still organizing debates at the local level, and a lot of the city councilmen and all these various kind of local positions, when voting time comes around, I try to look for those on YouTube, and I believe on Facebook they have debates. Like you said, a lot of things can be viewed online. And I just remember when you're talking that there's also like a local Plainfield, I believe it's specific to Plainfield, like public access channel too. I don't watch it at all. I'm not familiar, but I believe there's a lot of various ways. It's just about getting the eyeballs you know, on your particular medium. You know, that's
yeah, exactly. And one thing that the pandemic facilitated was it was always these meetings were on that public access channel, but you still have to watch it at a certain time.
Yeah.
Now it's on demand.
Okay,
Every single council meeting's on demand. And I believe the Board of Ed will start putting its meetings on demand as well.
Awesome.
We actually picked it up because they were online live, but you couldn't stream them after.
Okay.
So I started screen recording the meetings and uploading them to my channel, just very recently. And now for this coming meeting, they're going to do it themselves because it's just it's people. And again, like the right to information and not having a paywall and all of that. It really is a right to know what's going on. And we never talk about it in that way because we have so many other rights, right? You're a progressive. That we need right to health care and stuff. Like there are some serious right to an education. There's some serious rights that are hugely important that we don't have. But the right to information, the right to news, and from everyone has the right to see what's going on Facebook, right? But the right to have news from a source you can at least in some way hold accountable is just something we need. And I could media critique all day. Full disclosure, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. Did not like how the national media treated him. Now
they had a whole documentary called Bernie Blackout that talked about it. So
they just that's a whole nother thing. But it's hugely important on the local level as well. And just telling the stories that are most important, that matter, that are most relevant and informative to the community. Every community deserves that. And as the only outlet that's operating in Plainfield right now, it's sometimes a heavy burden. And especially because it's one thing, right? You're looking at the national level, and not to let them off the hook, right? But you got MSNBC who has their little slant, right? And then you have the Fox Newses and whoever else, right? They all have their, and they kind of, I'm not going to say they balance each other. They don't. And I'm never going to say that. It's all corporate media, right? Tap Into is independently owned. But it's all corporate media and it's not a good balance. But one has this slant, one has that slant, and people can read different sources and see different things. When you're the only one writing, it's a heavy burden to make things objective and say what happened, because it's not like, oh, they might read me and read someone else. No, like this is literally the only source and the only person writing about this meeting. Got to get it right. It's even more. It's just a burden from a human standpoint. Like I can't mess this up if no one else is doing it. So
for the most part, when I find clips from mainstream media, that's what I do on my Twitter account mainly, and I do have an objective lens when I put the caption, and a lot of times I use what's on the chyron or the lower third of the actual clip, and basically I find news that I think progressives can use, the left can use, and that's what I do. Like especially with the recent unfortunate war in Gaza, or the genocide going on there, I try to find a lot of news on that, and it's rare to find it nowadays. At times it was plentiful, but I think as the election is ramping up, you don't hear about it as much. But a lot of times I just lay out the straight news, and my philosophy is to make it more shareable. If I put a slant on it, it might not be as shareable, but there are times that I break my own rule, and like I put hashtag Gaza genocide because it is. And I mean, sometimes I like to just put it out plain on, so that hopefully if it does go viral, people can see that it's attached to this Gaza genocide, and whether it starts a conversation or whatnot. Sometimes I do have to let my non-objectivity show at times.
Of course, but I think just telling the truth and doing what you do as a media critic and showing what they do, showing the hypocrisy that you see in the media. It does it because those are who people. Those are who I say we, just as the general public, rely on to learn about these things. When you shared that clip of admitting, I can talk a little bit national politics. You shared the clip of Adam Smith.
Oh yeah, that one.
Hey, he was there to beat Bernie Sanders, right? Like sometimes they tell on themselves, and you got to highlight it. But
exactly. Nah, 100%. And those clips, I'm glad to see that it sparks a discussion. Like the other days, my close friends like say, "Hey man, I saw this clip." And I know, like, they know it was me that did it. Like, you get paid for any of this? And I'm like, I don't get paid, but I'm glad. What brings me delight is that it affects the national discord to a certain extent. And that same clip that you're talking about, I think it had my most amount of views I've ever had on the channel, 4 million views or something like that. And a lot of people were talking about it, and it was satisfying to me, and especially the fact that a lot of people felt gaslighted 2, 3, 4 years ago, saying like, "Oh no, this is not what happened." You know, nobody collaborated to kick all the other moderates out to keep Biden in to go up against. You know, oh, you just don't believe your lying eyes, and then here's somebody from within the camp, the Democratic Party, or actual representative, Adam Smith, like you said, saying the quiet part out loud. So,
yep. And it indicts the media as well, because they were part of all that, like you said. You know, so yep. Exactly.
Another highlighted clip that I'll just talk about real quick was Simone Sanders. I actually clip. Sometimes I'll do this. If I remember a clip from months ago, I'll say, "Man, this is definitely hypocrisy. Let me go find that clip and put these clips together." And there was she talked about how there will not be a democratic process, and this is before Biden dropped out, and you know, Marianne Williamson, Cenk Uygur, Dean Phillips, I believe he was these people who ran against Biden. But here is Simone Sanders on MSNBC, and she's a host. She's not, you know, she was a Democratic operative who worked in the White House before, but she, as her MSNBC host position, she's saying will not be a democratic process. And then later on, she said recently, like, "Oh yeah, there was a democratic process and they picked Joe Biden." No, you just said, and I put those two clips together. But so I enjoy those putting those type of things together. I want to ask you about AI, and this is something that just came to me. Are you worried about artificial intelligence replacing journalism, or what's your thoughts on that?
I've had thoughts on that both as a journalist, and also I write full time. The journalism is something I do part time. A lot of late nights and long weekends, but I also write full time. And it's something I've thought about from a journalism standpoint to a certain extent, but in practice, I don't really think it can replace on the ground journalism. I just, you know, you can have AI if we take it back to meetings here in town. There's some things it's even more impossible because I get out and interview people, you know. There were some break-ins in a neighborhood, and I'll tell you this story. There was some break-ins not long ago. I guess it was late July. Time is flying. Maybe it was in August. And this group called Open, and they're a Black Panther inspired group. They have the 10-point program. They do cleanups. They do food and grocery programs. They do
really, and this is local to Plainfield.
Local in Plainfield.
Wow, I did not know this. Wow.
I'll introduce you to them.
Yeah, I'd love to interview them.
Would be a great interview. Oh
yeah,
yeah. I will introduce you in person to him. So they did these patrols at night to catch the young kids, or actually they didn't know who did the break-in, but this woman knew who they were. They're very active in this particular neighborhood. Said, "Hey, we had a burglary middle of the night around 11." So they started doing patrols every night, and they caught 2 14-ish-year-old kids breaking into a car, or about to break into a car. They were on their bikes and they kept looking back. You know, they knew what was going on. So they went and talked to them, and now they kind of brought them into the program. Nice. And so I did a story about these patrols, and I'll be doing hopefully a story talking to these 2 kids who they brought into the program now as a follow-up. And AI can't do that. Long story short, you know, AI cannot do that. AI can't do most things. And the only thing I could think that maybe someone could use AI to do the actual writing, maybe like they might interview somebody, say, hey, AI, turn this transcript, this discussion, turn this audio clip into an article. It won't be a very good one, though. At least not where AI is now. Like I don't use any AI. Also, for meetings, right? City council meeting, AI, summarize this. They're not going to hit the tenor of it because I'm using 20 years, I'll say roughly, of municipal knowledge, longer than that, of knowledge of what goes on here in Plainfield, to know what's important, to know what's relevant, to know precedent. And the precedent I'm using is nowhere online. So for certain things, maybe on a more national level, maybe where stuff exists on the internet, but on a local level, AI really couldn't really come in and affect local journalism too much.
That's interesting, because I had a conversation about this recently, that I could see AI can be either used as a hammer. A hammer can be used as a tool to build a house, or can be used as a tool to kill somebody. So I look at AI in that way, that it could be problematic or can be beneficial. And in the journalistic world, I think it might be able to allow a single journalist like yourself to cover more things, in the sense of what you just said, that if you get a transcript of a 3-hour meeting and you can say, hey, put a prompt, AI, from this point of view, can you let me know the slants, or can you give me the slants from a progressive point of view or a conservative point of view, or give me the highlights of this? And there's ways to educate a model to your thinking, that down the line, because you can't be everywhere. So if there's a school board meeting and certain types of meetings going on, or there might be court cases that you can't go to every single court case, but if there's transcripts out there, you can have AI scan them for anything interesting, and you can put in the prompts for specifically, because that's why I say it will need a human touch. So you can put in the prompts that that would be beneficial to the community for all the court cases, to say, hey, maybe there was a slumlord, and you wanted to find out if there was any cases that had to do with, the earlier case that we were talking about, but you have time to go through all the court cases, and you can have AI do it. But yeah, I think
absolutely. No, I agree there. I guess I'm thinking of more of like the Chat GPT thing, the transcript, that level AI that could actually do clerical work the way that it does in law firms nowadays. Absolutely. It could be an aid. Also, sometimes I could imagine, I haven't done this, but I could imagine you might say, AI, summarize this. You read the summary, and then maybe where to go back in the transcript.
Yeah, that's true.
See, oh, that happened there. Like, there's different ways. Because I live a life of transcripts. I'm there with my phone. I upload, I make a transcript, and then I read through the transcript. I know who said what. But in another way that we're considering, I mentioned before the difficulty with language in the community, reaching everybody, no matter which language they speak. AI, I'm exploring having AI facilitate articles in Spanish. And I say facilitate because AI is a wonderful translator, but you need a human touch after. You can't just say AI did it. But my wife happens to be a native Spanish speaker. So
excellent.
If I could AI some stories and then give it to her and have her go through with a fine-tooth comb, right, exactly, and change things and make things sound more natural. That's a way where it's like, I don't want to use AI in my writing, right? I don't ever want to do that. But the benefit outweighs the cost here. Like, I'm using AI to help facilitate writing something and then having it be checked. But the benefit is I can reach 15, 20,000 more people with this news than I could. So it's like, if that's the way to get it done, that might be the way to go.
1,000%, because even for myself with what I do, I've been looking into it here and there, and I haven't seen the technology just right yet. So I was thinking it would be great to have AI monitoring MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, and then say, hey, AI, when certain people are interviewed, alert me when certain topics are being discussed, reparations, Medicare for all, et cetera, alert me, and then I'll know to go look for those specific clips, because I can't be looking for clips all the time. So
right.
That's something that even for what I do, I've been thinking about it, and hopefully I can figure out how, because I'm an IT technical kind of person, so I'm hoping I can figure that out. All right, so I heard you was in France for a year, lived in France. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you, how was that? Did you see any differences between America and France, with the government services, etc.?
Yeah, so for sure. The government services are, I'll start off at the top. This is the one that always gets people, is that I had a studio, a very small studio, which already, that's not a government benefit, but the fact that very small studios exist was like a game changer for me, because I could live in a little tiny place that me as a single 24-year-old man, I didn't need too much space, right? So I have I had my desk / table that was under my bunk bed. Like the bed was above the table, got a little bathroom. And the rent in Rouen, Rouen, it was something, this was in 2010, 2011. It was like $280 a month. So,
oh wow.
280 euros, dollars, maybe 300, about three. But not only that, the government was willing to basically pay all of it. When you're a young person, the government will pay a significant portion of your income. And it takes a while, right? The bureaucracy moves slow, but I got to check. Back after, because I had graduated from college and went recent college grad. Boom, they paid off like 90% of my rent, which I already thought was great, So,
but they tell me that you're going to lose. You're not going to have any work ethic if you're just being handed money. What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, they do say that, right? But this benefit, it gets young families, and it's a formula. If you have kids, they'll give you a certain amount, and and it doesn't, from what I know, it doesn't affect work ethic much. Of course, the health system, I mean, everything's free, but paying the rent is really the one that gets people, because it's, and not in a way, of course, there's some rental aid here, but it's like you got to jump through hoops to get it, and it's only in certain. This is like really, blanket anyone who has not really had much income in the past couple of years. Like,
and you're not even a native to France, right? And they get
not even a native, but anyone who has a work visa is able to do that.
I mean, here they cry about if you give migrants any free healthcare. Now, I agree that native people, if they're not getting healthcare too, then that's a problem. But I think one of the way they try to demonize Medicare for all, especially for VP Harris, even though I don't think she was serious about Medicare for all at all, and I don't think she's going to do anything about the medical. And you don't have to comment.
Right. No. But
I think that they demonize healthcare by saying, the migrants are going to get healthcare if we give it to all. And I'm like, well, if somebody gets COVID is not going to come to one person and say, you're a native person here, I'm not going to affect you, and then go to the migrant person and say, I'm going to affect you. That's not how diseases, that's not how, it works. So you make sure that everybody gets taken care of, so that a population doesn't make more people sick,
Exactly. And the government programs are stronger when they're blanket. Now, this rent aid obviously is not blanket. Like, they're not going to pay your rent if you have had a great income the last few years, but it's blanket in that, like, it hits a bigger portion of the population than most of even the social safety net programs here touch. Even that one, it is means tested. But yeah, of course, the other stuff like the Medicare for all that they have and such, it's not means tested at all. And those programs are stronger when they're not means tested. When you start,
did you see any strikes when you're out there? Because I know, for instance,
strikes all the time, man.
That's what we need. You think you're in America?
Yo, you're right. No, absolutely. It's just like I'm there just trying to get my little mail, something I ordered, and I got to pay for it. Now, granted, it's worth it, but
I think they have more solidarity there because it happens so often. People, if they're in the street, like in traffic, they're like, okay, I know it's a protest going on, I'll just wait
Exactly. It is what it is. You know, sometimes one day I couldn't get, luckily I could carpool people, but like my first job there, I worked as an English assistant teacher. The buses can go on strike. The mail can go on strike. Mail is not even allowed to go on strike here, but like anyone can go on strike, you know. They probably tried it there, right? They probably told them the mail can't go on strike, and they probably went on strike, and that was the end of that.
Right there, oh, where we can't go on strike? All right.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's different. It is something something kind of, you know, inspiring just as a progressive that they will not hesitate to shut stuff down. And it's inconvenient at times, but
we need that energy. I was excited to hear that Shawn Fain, you know, as much as people are mad at him currently for endorsing Kamala Harris and for selling on the strike that they had, I think he has the right idea when he's trying to organize for a general strike in 2028. I think 2028 should be something that progressives like myself are trying to organize towards to help out with that. He's trying to get all the unions or other unions or as many unions as possible to have contract and around the same time in 2028, so that then they, instead of just one union at a time, like the UAW, how they went on strike, and then you see the Teamsters go on strike here at certain times, have everybody go on strike at the same time and have maybe one big demand. Maybe they can all demand for Medicare for everyone. Maybe they can demand for a parental leave of 12 weeks or more. You know, they have crazy amount of days when when women give birth or for their family, they have a ton of days over there.
Oh yeah.
So that happens here. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, agreeing. I didn't want to. Direct action, it works. And to bring it back, you know, we're talking about Plainfield. Direct action, it brings eyes, it brings visibility, it ups your cause, and it lets everyone else. It lets folks know about your cause and join in on it. It just works. Whatever you're talking about, the general strike, it works. A lot of people will see that and say, "Wow," you know. And to bring it to Plainfield, you know, that building you talked about that was evicted 24 hours. It was the 5th building where that happened. You didn't hear about the first 4 times.
No, I did not. Wow.
But at the 5th time, the people got into the street, and you saw it was national news. Yeah, like that's what happens. That's what happens. And now, the city, since that happened, the city has started an initiative where now, when these new apartment buildings come in, they all get 10 to 15% affordable housing. So if we just look at some cause and effect, without going too much into the details of the development, but you can almost say with relative, not certainty, but I'm telling you, those protests happened in August, and the city revealed its push for more affordable housing in September, right? So I don't think I don't think I'm overstepping by saying there's a correlation here.
Yeah,
and now there's dozens and dozens and dozens, probably well over 100 affordable I forget the other term they use, but affordable units that will be built in Plainfield. So regardless of what anyone thinks about development and such, like, those affordable units would likely not be there were it not for the protests. So whether the protesters were not trying to get affordable units, that's the thing too. When it's direct action movement stuff, man, it goes in places where people don't even intend for it to go. And you go back to any movement, civil rights movement. Sometimes what is attained isn't what was
intended.
What was intended, for better or for worse. Sometimes, that's true. Sometimes, the 2020 protests, things were attained. They were not what I think the protesters wanted. And a lot of money went to the wrong places. But exactly. I know some people. Who were given a shot in a certain industry and have careers in this or that industry that would not without the protests, because some of these corporations said, "Okay, we got to do better." So I know some people who were able to join fields and such that they wouldn't have, but that was not. But that was not the goal of those protests. That's not what it was trying to fix. And I don't think that, anyway, that's a whole different discussion, but
yeah, totally
disagree with you that direct action, just on the ground, even here in Little Plainfield, you can see, no matter, anytime you look at it, it goes places you don't know where it'll go. And it highlights your cause and does make change.
David Rutherford, the local Plainfield journalist, reporter, I appreciate your time, and I'm definitely going to put your link in the description below. And also, you have somebody that my next interview that I have to reach out and get the information for. Looking forward to talking to that local Black Panther like organization, and I appreciate your time. Any last words?
Yeah, they can find me at tapintoplainfield.net. That is the website. That's where you can sign up for your email. Instagram is tapintoplainfield. Twitter, the same. Most active on the site. Follow us on Instagram as well, tapintoplainfield. And I just can't stress the importance of local news. Anyone out there listening, I'll tell a story to finish us off. I joined that blogosphere in Plainfield in 2013. I was very active for about 3-4 years, give or take. And if you ever just felt like you wanted to write, like you have something to say, like you wanted to go out and cover things and write about it and speak your mind, just do it. Just start that WordPress, get out there, write, build trust within the community. There's no reason you can't do it. I had no training in writing. I was an architecture major, but I just went out there with my pen and the pad and started writing. And you can make an impact in your community. There's always the need for more voices, more people paying attention, and more people writing down what they see. Get your camera, get your phone, get your pen, your pad, and just start writing. That's all I'm gonna say. Even if you haven't before, if it was a little something in your mind, get going, and it can be rewarding.
Thanks for those last words, guys. I hope you felt inspired. I hope you find your local Tap In organization, your local town, and if there's not one, reach out to them and see if you can start one in your area. All right, everybody. Could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. I appreciate it, and I hope you learned. You got a little smarter with this interview. You have a great one.